My name is Diane. I'm 40 years old, a widow, and for the last 2 years, I've been trying to pretend that my life still makes sense. I say pretend because that's what it feels like most days. I wake up, I make breakfast, I do laundry, I water the plants, I keep the house in order like I always used to, but inside, it's empty. When my husband died, people told me I was strong. They said things like, "Diane, you'll get through this. You're such a rock for Emily." And I nodded, smiled, thanked them. But what I really felt was hollow, like something essential had been ripped out of me, and now I was just going through motions, filling space, holding everything together so my daughter wouldn't see how broken I was. Emily is 20 now. She's bright, busy, full of life. She goes out with friends. She works. She laughs in that careless way only the young can. Sometimes when I watch her, I feel proud. She's moving forward, living. And other times, I feel old, left behind, like I'm fading into the background of my own life. Then Michael entered the picture. He's 27, Emily's boyfriend. At first, he was just that, the polite young man who picked her up, who smiled and shook my hand, who carried grocery bags without being asked. I liked him. I liked how respectful he seemed, how calm. Emily looked at him the way a young woman looks when she believes she's found something steady. But then his circumstances changed. Rent was too high. Money was tight. And Emily asked if he could stay with us for a while. "Just temporary," she said. "Just until he got back on his feet." I hesitated. Of course. Sharing a house with my daughter's boyfriend? It felt strange. But then again, what reason did I really have to say no? We had space. He was trustworthy enough. And the truth was, we needed the extra income. So I agreed. And that's when everything started to shift. The house had been so quiet for so long. My husband was gone. Emily was out most of the time, and silence had become the wallpaper of my life. But Michael's presence filled that silence. The sound of a man's footsteps on the stairs again, the low rumble of his voice drifting from the kitchen, the faint scent of cologne when he walked past. At first, it was comforting, like the house was breathing again. But then, it began to feel dangerous. I noticed myself noticing him. I'd be folding laundry and hear him laugh with Emily in the other room, and my chest would ache in a way I didn't understand. I'd walk past the bathroom door and see his shadow move inside, and I'd feel a quick, guilty rush in my stomach. At night, when the house was dim and I couldn't sleep, I'd picture the outline of his shoulders when he leaned against the counter, or the way his eyes lingered a second too long when we spoke. I told myself it was nothing. Imagination. A trick of grief and loneliness. After all, I hadn't been touched, really touched, in years. I hadn't been looked at the way a woman wants to be looked at since before my husband got sick. So maybe I was projecting. Maybe I was clinging to scraps of attention because I didn't know how to feel alive anymore. But the truth? The truth was harder. Michael wasn't just being polite. His eyes, God, his eyes, sometimes locked on mine in a way that was too intense, too deliberate. And when he smiled, it wasn't just courtesy. It was like he was holding something back, testing me, waiting. I hate myself for admitting it, but my body betrayed me. My pulse would quicken when he entered a room. My skin would heat when he stood too close. And my mind, traitorous as it was, replayed the smallest moments on a loop. The brush of his hand when he passed me a mug, the warmth in his voice when he said my name. I tried to bury it, tried to busy myself with chores, errands, anything that would distract me. But temptation doesn't vanish just because you look away. It lingers. It grows. It waits for the moment you're too tired to fight. One evening, I remember, Emily had gone out with friends, and it was just the two of us at home. The house was quiet again, but not the empty, peaceful kind of quiet. No, this was heavy, loaded, a silence that seemed to buzz in the air. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter, when I heard him moving in the living room, the sound of a magazine page turning, the soft creak of the couch. I told myself to ignore it, to stay busy, to keep distance. But every second I was aware of him, of the fact that we were alone. That night, for the first time, I realized how thin the line really was between safety and danger, between loneliness and desire. And that realization terrified me. I wanted to scream at myself, "He's Emily's boyfriend. He's too young. He's off limits." But instead, I stayed silent and restless, and trembling in ways I couldn't control. That was the beginning of something I still don't know how to name, something I can't seem to stop. No matter how much I know I should, sometimes I think if I could go back to that night, I'd make different choices. I'd leave the house, go for a walk, call a friend, anything to avoid that thick, unbearable silence between us. But I didn't. I stayed. And in staying, I opened a door I can't seem to close. I don't know what you'll think of me for saying all this. Maybe you'll hate me. Maybe you'll pity me. But I promised myself if I ever told this story, I'd tell it honestly. And the honest truth is that Diane, a 40-year-old widow, let myself feel something for a man who should have been untouchable. It didn't happen all at once. It crept in, slow and soft, disguised as comfort, disguised as company, and by the time I realized how far it had gone, it was already too late. The silence of this house isn't empty anymore. It hums, it throbs, it watches. Every time I pass his door, every time I hear his voice, every time his eyes flick toward me, when he thinks no one is looking, I feel it. The beginning, the danger, the thing I can't confess to anyone but you. The next morning started like any other morning, except it didn't feel like any other morning. I woke before the sun did, the house still gray and hushed, and stood at the kitchen sink watching the thin line of light crawl across the counter. I could hear the refrigerator hum and the old wall clock tick. Those used to be the only sounds. Now there's another rhythm under them, like a small drum you don't see, a beat you feel in your chest. I boiled water. I set out mugs. I moved slowly. So slowly. Like if I moved quickly, something inside me would spill. Emily was still asleep. Michael's door was closed. I tried to be grateful for the few minutes of peace, but peace isn't peace when your head is busy. The kettle began to sing. I poured. I was reaching for the sugar when I heard his door open and his footsteps come down the hall. I didn't turn right away. I looked at the steam lifting off the coffee like it knew how to leave. "Morning," he said, warm, easy. "Morning," I answered, soft. He stood beside me, close enough that I felt the air shift. He reached for a mug, then paused. "Do you want me to make yours?" he asked, like it was natural, like he'd done it 100 times. "I've got it." I slid the sugar toward him. The spoon clinked against the mug. Our hands brushed, just a quick pass, but my skin knew it. I pulled back too fast, and the spoon rattled hard enough to make me wince. "Careful," he said, a smile in his voice. "It's hot." I know. My voice sounded small, like it belonged to someone else. I took a breath. "Thanks." He leaned his hip against the counter, watching me add cream. His eyes were gentle, not pushing, but present. We didn't talk about anything important. Weather, work schedules. There was a leaky faucet, he said. He could take a look after breakfast. I nodded, grateful for a task that lived in the world and not in my head. Emily drifted in with sleepy hair and a laugh for no reason. She kissed my cheek, stole a bite of my toast, and told us she'd be late home. Something about a shift picking up, something about meeting friends afterward. The house brightened when she was in it, and I clung to that brightness as if it were a rope. Michael teased her. She teased back. For a minute, we were just 3 people in a kitchen, and none of us were dangerous. By noon, the kitchen was quiet again. Emily had left, and I had a list in my hand I wasn't really reading. I found myself standing in the doorway watching Michael kneel under the sink, the cabinet doors open wide like a mouth. Tools spread across a towel, shoulders moving as he worked. He reached up blindly, and I handed him the wrench before he asked, like I knew what he needed. Our fingers connected around the cold metal. A flash. Not lightning, nothing dramatic. Just the body remembering itself. "Thanks," he said, not looking up. "You're welcome." I stared at the faucet. "Does it look bad?" "It's just a washer." His voice was steady. "Annoying, not fatal." Annoying, not fatal. I wondered what else that could describe. The drip stopped. He wiped the edge of the sink with a rag and stood. We were too close without meaning to be. He smelled like soap and something clean that wasn't soap. I stepped sideways and bumped the trash can. It tipped and clattered, and I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. "Sorry," I said, bending to straighten it. He bent too, and we almost knocked heads. His breath brushed my cheek, and I froze. He froze. We looked at each other an inch too long. Then he cleared his throat and took a step back. "I'll put the tools away," he said. "Okay." I kept my eyes on the floor until the moment passed. In the afternoon, the living room filled with the low glow of the TV. I turned it on for company and then didn't watch it. He sat on the couch with a magazine. I folded laundry on the coffee table like a person who has it together. Shirts, towels, a stack of pillowcases. I kept my hands busy and my thoughts careful. The show on the screen had people talking fast and moving through a city I didn't recognize. They looked clear. I didn't feel clear. "Do you always walk in the evenings?" he asked, eyes still on his pages. I looked up. "Sometimes helps me think." "Or not think," he said, and smiled like he knew the difference. "Maybe both." I folded a towel perfectly in half, then in half again, as if precision could save me. We didn't talk for a while after that. The silence wasn't empty. You know how a song will keep playing in your head even after you turn the radio off? It was like that. You can't hear it, but you can't stop hearing it either. Around 5, I started dinner. Onions, garlic. The pan hissed. The smell filled the house. He came in and leaned on the doorframe, just there, not intruding, not helping, watching the way people watch the ocean. "Smells good," he said. "Thank you." I stirred, careful not to look at him. "Emily will be late." "I know." A pause. "Can I do anything?" "You can set the table if you want." He did. Plates, forks, glasses, simple things that felt enormous. He moved like he belonged here. Maybe he did. Maybe that's what scared me most. We ate with the TV off, the clink of forks, the scrape of a chair. He told me something about work, the little stories people tell to prove they're people. I told him something about the neighbor's tree. We were polite. We were almost normal. Twice our feet touched under the table. Twice we both pretended it didn't happen. After dinner, I washed dishes and he dried. We moved around each other in the small kitchen without bumping, a choreography we hadn't practiced, but somehow knew. At one point, he reached for a plate, while I reached too, and our hands met. Flat palm to flat palm over a circle of white porcelain. My skin flashed hot. I pulled away with a clumsy laugh. "Sorry," I said again. It had become my favorite word. "It's okay," he said softly, and he meant it. Later, I walked. The sky was the kind of blue that pretends to be calm. My shoes made soft sounds on the sidewalk. I passed houses with their own quiet dramas inside and wondered how many women were pretending as hard as I was. I didn't listen to music. I listened to my breath, counted steps, named trees, anything to keep my mind away from where it wanted to go. When I came back, the house was dim. A lamp cut a warm circle in the living room. Michael was on the couch, one ankle crossed over his knee, half listening to the news. He looked up when I stepped in and studied my face like he was trying to read the weather. "Good walk?" he asked. It was fine. I stood with my hand still on the doorknob, not sure if I should go to my room or sit or leave again. "Clear." He nodded. "You look lighter." "I don't feel lighter." He didn't answer for a second. Then, quietly, "Grief is heavy in strange places." The word struck me like a gentle slap. Not cruel, waking. I sat in the chair across from him because I needed somewhere to put my body. "You're young to know that," I said. "I'm not as young as I look." He smiled, then let the smile fade. "And I pay attention." We watched the news until the news turned into commercials. He muted it. The room changed shape when the voices disappeared. I could hear the clock again. I could hear my heart. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, and looked at me without hiding it. Not a stare. Exactly. A question. I didn't have an answer. "Diane," he said, and my name in his voice felt different than in anyone else's. Warmer. Closer. "If I say the wrong thing, you'll tell me." I swallowed. "You haven't yet." He held that, like a thread he wasn't sure would hold. "Okay." He sat back. "Then I'll say. You don't have to pretend with me." My throat tightened. "I'm not pretending." He tilted his head. "You're tired of carrying the world like it's your job," I wanted to say. "You don't know me." I wanted to say, "This is none of your business." But he did know, in the way anyone who really looks can know. I looked down at my hands. They were clean, and I still felt like I needed to wash them. "I'm fine," I said, the soft lie I had polished smooth. "Okay," he said again. But we both knew okay didn't mean what it usually means. I stood because I couldn't sit in that feeling any longer. "I'm going to make tea." I went to the kitchen and filled the kettle and listened to the water fill like it mattered. He followed but stopped at the threshold, not crossing it, leaving space between us like a good man would. "Do you want some?" I asked, already opening a second mug. "Sure," he said, voice low. The kettle hummed, then hissed, and when I poured the water, the steam rose like a curtain. He stepped in to hand me the tea bag, and our fingers touched again. This time, I didn't flinch. This time, I felt the heat and didn't drop the thread. We both looked down at our hands like they belonged to strangers. Then we let go at the same time. "Thanks," I said. "Anytime," he answered. We stood there, two adults in a kitchen, holding cups. pretending cups or shields. I could have left the room. He could have gone back to the couch. Neither of us did. We sipped. The tea was too hot, and I drank it anyway. "Good night," I said finally, because the word had to be said, or else we would stand there forever. "Good night, Diane." The way he said it made my name feel like a place. I turned and walked down the hall, and I didn't look back, but I felt his eyes on the space I had just been. My bedroom was cool and neat and careful. I set the cup on the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed and pressed my palms into the mattress until I felt the springs. The house was quiet again, not empty, not safe, just quiet in that buzzing way that promises a storm you can't see yet. I lay down and stared at the ceiling and listened to the clock count out the distance between me and the person I was before this began. I told myself I could stop it. I told myself nothing had happened. I told myself I was still the mother who always made the right choice, the woman who kept things together. I whispered those lines like prayers. And yet, under them, the other truth kept breathing. I noticed myself noticing him. And once you start, you don't unsee. It was a Saturday afternoon when the line between ordinary and dangerous thinned to almost nothing. Emily had a double shift and wouldn't be home until late. I told myself it would be just another day, just another stretch of hours to fill with cleaning, errands, maybe a walk. But I already felt the weight of being alone in the house with him. I was in the laundry room folding towels, trying to lose myself in neat squares and straight edges, when I heard the back door open. Michael's voice called out, casual. "I'm just out in the yard for a bit." "Okay," I answered, hoping my voice sounded even. From the window above the sink, I could see him. He had dragged the hedge trimmers out, wearing only a faded gray t-shirt and shorts. The sun was warm, bright, merciless. Sweat beaded on his forehead, ran down the line of his throat. His arms flexed with each careful cut. I told myself I was just checking that he was safe with the tools, but my eyes lingered too long. My chest tightened. I should have walked away. Instead, I filled a glass with cold water and carried it out. "You'll dehydrate," I said, handing it to him. He smiled, grateful, took it, and drank in long swallows that made his throat move. I looked away quickly, embarrassed by where my mind was going. He handed me the empty glass, his fingers brushing mine, and it was such a small thing, but it ran through me like a current. "Thanks," he said, breathless but easy. "You saved me?" I laughed softly, shaking my head. "It's just water, Michael." "Not just water," he replied, voice lower now, eyes holding mine. I turned away too fast, muttered something about bringing him a towel, and hurried inside. In the kitchen, I grabbed one from the drawer, telling myself I was being kind, maternal even. But when I stepped back out and offered it, his hand didn't just take it. He let mine press against his damp skin for a heartbeat too long. The fabric slipped, and suddenly my fingers were against the hard plane of his chest, the heat of his body soaking into me. I froze. He didn't move. His eyes met mine, steady, unflinching. My pulse hammered. I yanked my hand back, clutching the towel to my chest like armor. "Sorry," I said too quickly, too brightly. "No need to be sorry," he said. And there was something in his tone, calm, but charged, like a wire buzzing under a layer of tape. I left him there, retreating into the house, my legs weak. I threw the towel into the laundry basket and stood at the sink, breathing hard, pressing cold hands to my face. But the smell of him lingered on my skin. Salt and sun and something alive I hadn't felt in years. Later that afternoon, I busied myself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, wiping counters. Anything to keep my hands steady. The back door opened and shut again, his footsteps padding across the tile. He set the tools down, washed up at the sink beside me. I felt the warmth of his body so close it made my skin ache. "You always keep this place spotless," he said, drying his hands. "Old habits," I answered. "I like order." He leaned against the counter, watching me slice carrots. "Emily's lucky. Not everyone gets that kind of home." I forced a laugh. I don't know if she'd call it lucky. She thinks I'm too strict. "She doesn't see what I see," he said quietly. My hand stilled on the cutting board. I looked up. His eyes were on me, unblinking, too deep, too sure. My stomach flipped, heat crawling up my neck. "Michael," I started, but my voice faltered. He straightened, gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't mean anything by it. Just, you deserve credit." I nodded, pretending to accept that, but the air between us was different now, thick, heavy with something neither of us named. The evening came on slow. Emily texted she'd be late, maybe midnight. The house settled into its quiet, but it wasn't the old kind of quiet anymore. I sat in the living room with a book I didn't read, every sound from the kitchen pulling at me, the clink of a glass, the fridge door, the soft tread of his feet. He came in finally, sat on the far end of the couch with a magazine. I kept my eyes on my pages, though I hadn't turned one in 20 minutes. The clock ticked. The TV hummed low without volume. Our breathing was the loudest thing in the room. At one point, I leaned forward to set my mug on the coffee table, and my knee brushed his leg. Just the briefest touch, but we both froze. My breath caught. His magazine lowered an inch. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I pulled back, stammering, "Sorry." His voice was calm, but there was a shadow under it. "You don't have to apologize every time." I didn't know what to say to that. My hands twisted in my lap. We sat there, not speaking, the tension coiling tighter. He shifted closer. Not much, just enough that the space shrank and I could feel his presence like a hum. I wanted to tell him to stop, to move away, to remember Emily, but the words stayed locked in my throat. The front door opened suddenly. Emily's voice rang out, cheerful, calling. "Mom, Michael, you home?" I jumped to my feet, too fast, nearly dropping my book. My heart pounded so hard I was sure she could hear it. "In here," I called, my voice shaky. Michael leaned back, picking up his magazine like nothing had happened, his face calm, composed, the perfect guest again. Emily walked in, smiled, dropped her bag. Long day. She flopped onto the chair, chatting about work, about friends, filling the room with her energy. I tried to match her smile, nodding in the right places, praying she didn't see the flush on my face or the way my hands still trembled. But when I glanced at Michael, just for a heartbeat, he was looking at me again. That same steady look, the one that said he'd noticed everything. And in that glance, I knew. I knew we were both past the point of pretending nothing was happening. It was late one evening when the house seemed too still, the kind of stillness that isn't peaceful but heavy. Emily had gone out with friends, texting me she wouldn't be back until after midnight. I told myself it was a gift, hours alone, time to read, to think, to maybe sleep early. I curled up on the couch with a book I couldn't follow. The lamp beside me cast a soft pool of light, leaving the rest of the room in shadows. I tried to lose myself in words, but my eyes kept drifting to the doorway, my ears tuned to every sound. Then I heard it, the quiet creak of a door down the hall, followed by steady footsteps. I froze, already knowing who it was. "Diane," Michael said softly as he stepped into the room. His voice was calm, low, almost careful. I looked up, pretending surprise. "Oh, hey. Couldn't sleep?" "Not really." He moved closer, stopping near the arm of the couch. "Mind if I sit?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Of course." He lowered himself onto the far end, leaving space between us, but not nearly enough. The silence stretched. I tried to refocus on my book, but my hands shook slightly, and the words blurred. "You always read at night?" he asked, his tone casual but edged with something deeper. "Sometimes helps me quiet my head." He leaned back, studying me. "Does it work?" "Not always," I admitted. Another pause. Then he said my name again, slower this time. "Diane." Something in the way he said it made me set the book down. My chest felt tight. "What is it?" He exhaled like he'd been holding the words too long. "I've been wanting to tell you something. For a while." I shook my head quickly. "Michael." "Just listen." He cut in, his eyes locking onto mine. "I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." My pulse spiked. "Feel what?" "You know," he said softly. "From the moment I met you, it was there. I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was just respect, just admiration. But it isn't just that. Every time I see you, every time we're in the same room, it's more." I swallowed hard, searching for words. "You're with Emily. She's my daughter. This can't even be—" "I know," he interrupted, voice low, steady. "Believe me, I know. But you feel it too, don't you?" I opened my mouth to deny it, to shut it down, but nothing came out, because deep inside, I knew he was right. I had felt it, the glances, the heat, the silence that hummed like a live wire between us. "Michael, please," I whispered. "Don't say this." His eyes softened. "I can't hold it back anymore. I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not noticing. I feel it when we're close. Tell me I'm imagining it, and I'll stop. But if you don't..." I turned my face away, pressing a hand to my forehead. My skin burned. "You don't understand what you're doing to me." "Then tell me," he urged, leaning closer. "Tell me you don't want me here, and I'll go." I looked back at him, ready to say it, ready to end it. But the words stuck in my throat. My lips parted, trembling, and nothing came out. His gaze flicked down to my mouth, and the air shifted. Before I could stop him, he reached for my hand resting on the cushion. His fingers slid over mine, warm, deliberate. I jolted, but I didn't pull away. His thumb brushed slowly across my skin, sending waves up my arm, down my spine. "Diane," he whispered again, and the way he said it wasn't polite anymore. It was hunger, restrained but undeniable. I should have yanked my hand back. I should have stood and walked away. Instead, I sat frozen, my breath shallow, my heart beating so loudly it drowned out every thought. Then he leaned in, inch by inch, closing the distance. His face was so close I could feel the heat of him, the faint trace of soap and sweat. His eyes searched mine, asking, daring. I tilted back slightly, but I didn't move far. My lips parted on instinct. His breath brushed my cheek, then hovered just at the corner of my mouth. The world shrank to that single point of space, that dangerous edge between restraint and surrender. And then, the sharp sound of footsteps in the hall. I jerked back instantly, my hand flying from his. Emily's voice called out, muffled but clear. "Mom, you awake?" Panic surged. Michael sat back, mask slipping instantly back into place. He picked up the magazine on the table, flipping it open as if he'd been reading all along. My body shook as I scrambled to find composure. "In here, honey," I called, praying my voice didn't sound broken. Emily appeared in the doorway, smiling faintly. "I thought you'd be asleep." "Oh, hey, Michael." "Hey," he said smoothly, not a trace of guilt in his tone. She chatted briefly about her night, about grabbing food with friends, her words bright and innocent, cutting through the thick fog of what almost happened. I forced myself to nod, to smile, to play the role I was supposed to. When she finally disappeared into her room, I exhaled a shaky breath. Michael glanced at me, just once, his expression unreadable, but his eyes burning with everything he hadn't said. I stood quickly, clutching my book to my chest. "Good night?" I murmured, not meeting his gaze. "Good night, Diane," he answered softly, voice heavy with unfinished meaning. I fled to my room, closed the door, and leaned against it, my knees trembling. I pressed my palms to my face, whispering to myself, "What are you doing? What are you letting happen?" But when I crawled into bed, the warmth of his hand still lingered on mine, the ghost of his breath still against my lips. And in the dark, I couldn't deny it anymore. Something had begun, and it was only getting harder to stop. Emily texted at 9:47, "Might crash at Mia's. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at the screen too long. Relief. Fear. Space is dangerous when you don't trust yourself. The house took a deep breath after that, the kind of breath that makes the walls softer and the air warmer. I told myself I would use the time well, fold laundry, answer emails, maybe soak the pans that had been bothering me all week. I did none of it. I turned on the TV for company, put the volume low enough to hear the world breathing behind it, and tucked my legs under me on the couch. A lamp lit the corner like a small campfire. I held a mug of tea I didn't want, just to have something to hold. I heard him before I saw him, ice clinking in a glass, the refrigerator door closing, footsteps soft on old wood. He paused in the doorway, not crossing the line, just looking at me like I was a weather report he was trying to read. "You still up?" he asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said, then lifted the remote. "Movie?" He nodded and came in, sitting on the far cushion by habit and then, minute by minute, forgetting the habit. We surfed through choices without talking about what we were doing. We landed on a film with more silence than dialogue. It was a good excuse for us to be quiet and pretend the quiet belonged to the screen. For a while, it was easy. The movie moved, my tea cooled, his glass warmed, our bodies adjusted to the same room, the same couch, the same slow drip of time. Then the blanket part happened, so small, so stupid. I reached for the knitted throw draped over the back. At the same time, he did. Our hands met in the dark weave, flat palm on flat palm, the texture rough between us. Neither of us let go first. "Sorry," I said, already pulling back. He didn't pull. He held for 2 heartbeats, then released as if he'd made a decision and was honoring it. "You're always cold," he said softly. "Take it. I'm fine." I lied. I wasn't cold. I was heat and nerves and something that didn't have a name anymore. He spread the blanket anyway, slow, casual, letting one corner fall across my knees. It felt like standing under a warm cloud. The movie flashed sailors and neon and rain, and none of it stuck because my entire world had shrunk to a square of knitted gray and the weight of it on both of us. The couch narrowed, not physically, just in the mind. He shifted, not much, but enough that my thigh felt the edge of his. I told myself to move away. I didn't. I told myself to say something light and safe. I couldn't think of anything light or safe. "Diane," he said, barely above the sound of the film. My name sat in the space between us like a fragile glass. I kept my eyes on the screen. A lie. They were on the glow in his glass, the line of his wrist, the place where the blanket rose and fell with his breath. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. No push, just a door, cracked open. I should have said yes. I should have handed him the door and shut it behind him and locked it twice. "You can stay," I heard myself say, and I listened to the words like they belonged to someone I didn't recognize. We watched another 5 minutes that we didn't watch. The film put two people in a room together and didn't let them out, and I nearly laughed at how the universe enjoys its jokes. He set his glass down. It made a soft click on the wood. The sound landed in me like a start gun. He turned slightly, and I could feel his attention change shape. Not staring, never staring. Just a steady, present seeing that made my skin feel seen, too. He reached up, slow, careful, and touched the edge of the blanket where it rested at my shoulder, smoothing it as if folding a thought. His knuckles skimmed the side of my neck. Heat shot through me so fast I had to close my eyes to steady it. "Michael," I said. Not a warning. Not permission. Just his name. Trying to be a boundary. "I know," he whispered, and the way his breath touched my cheek made the boundary thinner. He shifted closer by an inch I could measure with my heartbeat. My hand was on the cushion, fingers pressed into the seam. He laid his hand over mine, warm, sure, no force, like you do when you promise not to drop something. My fingers opened without me telling them to. He threaded his between mine. The fit was shockingly simple. "This is wrong," I said, the words falling out on a single exhale. "I know," he said again, not arguing. "We can stop." I could have pulled my hand away right then, chalked it up to a slip, a late-night mistake softened by the TV glow. I didn't. I watched our hands like they were someone else's. I could feel my pulse in my palm. I could feel his pulse answer. He leaned in. Everything slowed. I could see the tilt of his head, the way his eyes moved to my mouth, the little pause he gave me to move or refuse. I didn't move. My breath became the only sound I could hear. His nose brushed mine, barely. His mouth hovered just off my upper lip. There was a hum between us, not sound, exactly, but sensation, like the air had become a small, taut string that would sing if anyone plucked it. And then the doorknob turned. The sound was ordinary. The effect was violent. I snapped my head back. He dropped my hand. The blanket slid like it knew to get out of the way. For a half second, we were two statues who had never learned to breathe. The door opened fast. Emily's voice came in ahead of her, bright and unguarded. "Mom? Surprise? Plans changed? Are you—" She stopped at the sight of us. Two people on a couch. Too close. Too still. Faces lit by movie light that made everything look guilty. Her eyes traveled from me to him and back to me. Quick. Sharp. And my heart did that drop. You feel when you miss a step in the dark. "Hey," I said. Too loud. Too cheerful. The kind of voice you use when you've just hidden something behind your back. "You're early." "Yeah, One syllable that didn't forgive me for anything. She put her bag down slowly. "What are you watching?" I looked at the screen like I was seeing it for the first time. "Something old," I said. "I don't even know." Michael spoke with a steadiness I envied. "We couldn't decide. It's boring." Emily glanced at the coffee table, his glass, my mug, the blanket draped across both our knees like a flag flown by the wrong country. Her lips pressed together. "I'm going to put my stuff away," she said, and turned before either of us could answer. We listened to her walk down the hall. Each footstep was a verdict. My chest ached with the effort not to run after her. When the door to her room clicked shut, the house dropped into a silence that felt like static. I stood, almost knocking the mug with my knee. I started, not finishing the sentence because there wasn't a sentence that worked. Michael stood, too. He looked at me in a way that asked 1,000 questions and promised 1,000 things he had no right to promise. "I'm sorry," he said, a quiet that felt true. "For what?" My voice trembled. "For almost, or for being seen?" "For both," he said. He took a small breath. "Do you want me to talk to her?" "No." My answer came out fast, sharp. "No, you'll make it worse." I swallowed. "I'll talk to her." He nodded. The space between us filled with things neither of us could afford to say. "Diane," he began, and I cut him off with a look because Emily could walk back in at any second, and I didn't trust my face to hide the fire in it. "Good night," I said, forcing the word to land like a door. He accepted it. "Good night." He took his glass and left the room like a man exiting a crime scene he hadn't technically committed yet. I stood alone, the TV still moving, the sound still low, the blanket still warm where it had been. I folded it with hands that didn't want to fold anything. I told my lungs how to work. I walked down the hall and stopped outside Emily's door. My knuckles hovered and dropped and hovered again. I knocked. "Yeah?" Her voice through wood. Flat. "It's me." A long pause. Then, "Come in." She was sitting on the edge of her bed, shoes half off, eyes on the carpet like it could confess for me. I sat in the chair by her dresser, hands in my lap like a schoolgirl called to explain a missing assignment. "Plans changed?" I asked, a stupid question to start with. She looked up. Her face was open and guarded at the same time. "Mia's mom needed the car. I didn't feel like staying." "Okay," I said. Silence stretched. I could hear the clock in the hallway louder than any words I had. "Dinner tomorrow? The three of us?" She studied me the way you study a crack in a glass you're not ready to throw away. "Sure." I nodded too much. "Okay. Good." I stood to leave, then stopped at the door. "I love you," I said, because it was true and because it felt like the only rope I had left. She didn't say it back. Not then. "Good night, Mom." I walked to my room like a person carrying a bowl too full. I set the bowl down on the dresser and it still spilled everywhere. I sat on the bed and pressed my palms to my eyes until I saw sparks. My lips still tingled from a kiss that never landed, that almost was louder than any yes. In the living room, the TV asked two strangers if they knew what they were doing. They didn't. Neither do I. I lay back and stared at the ceiling and listened to the house hold its breath. Across the hall, Emily turned in her bed. Down the hall, Michael's door closed with care, as if care could fix the shape of what we were breaking. I told myself this could end here, that a near miss could be a lesson, a hard stop. Then I remembered the look in his eyes when our hands fit, the way my body leaned before my mind could vote. The truth sat down beside me like an uninvited friend. We had almost kissed, almost as a cliff, and I was already looking over the edge. The days after that night felt like walking through smoke. Emily barely spoke to me. She went about her routines, work, phone, friends, but her eyes lingered too long on me when she did speak, as if searching for cracks. I kept telling myself she hadn't really seen anything, just two people on a couch, too close, maybe, but not crossing the line. I told myself she'd forget. I told myself lies. Michael was quieter too, at least around her. He played his role perfectly, helpful, polite, measured. But when it was just the two of us, the air changed. His eyes would lock on mine, holding, pressing. I'd look away. I'd busy my hands with dishes or a rag or anything, but it didn't matter. The tension hummed like electricity in the walls. Waiting. One night, after Emily had gone to her room early, I found myself walking down the hallway with a basket of laundry. Ordinary, safe. At least it should have been. I turned the corner and nearly dropped the basket. Michael was there, leaning against the wall as if waiting. His shadow stretched long behind him. "Hey," I whispered, more startled than I meant to sound. He smiled faintly. "Didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't." I lied, hugging the basket tighter. He tilted his head, studying me. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy," I answered, shifting past him. But as I moved, he reached out and pressed his hand lightly against the wall beside me, blocking my way. Not hard, not aggressive, just enough. "Michael," I said, heart thudding. "Don't." His voice dropped. I can't stop thinking about that night. I looked up at him, my mouth dry. "You need to forget it." "Can you?" he asked. His eyes caught mine, steady, unrelenting. "Tell me you don't feel it too." I should have shouted, pushed, made it final. But my throat locked. The truth lived in my silence, and he knew it. He stepped closer, his body heat pressing against me though he didn't touch. I could smell soap, cologne, the faint salt of sweat. My breath came too fast. He lifted his hand, not to trap this time, but to touch. Fingers under my chin, gently tilting my face up. "Michael," I whispered again, but softer now. "Just once," he murmured. "One time, and I'll never ask again." The words were a lie. I knew it even as he said them, but my body betrayed me. My lips parted, my eyes fluttered shut. And then I pushed him back, sudden, panicked. My palms pressed against his chest, solid and hot. He stumbled half a step, surprise flashing across his face. "No," I said, breathless. "I can't. She's my daughter." "You're..." "I'm what?" he pressed. "Her boyfriend? A tenant? A man who can't stop wanting you?" His tone sharpened, edged with something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't just desire anymore. It was hunger, insistent and dark. "I'm her mother," I said firmly, though my voice wavered. "That has to mean something." He studied me, then leaned in closer, not touching, but close enough that I felt cornered. "It does mean something," he whispered. "It means you've been lonely longer than anyone knows. And I see you. I see what no one else does." I shivered. My hands still tingled from where they'd pressed against him. My chest rose and fell too quickly. I hated myself for how much I wanted to lean back into that heat, that presence. Finally, I slipped past him, clutching the basket like a shield. I shut myself in my room and pressed my back to the door. My whole body trembled. I wanted to scream at him, at myself, at the universe that put me in this house with him. But all I did was whisper into the dark, "Please stop. Please don't make me want this." The next morning, Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. She grabbed her keys, mumbled a goodbye, and was gone before I could speak. The silence left behind was heavier than any argument. Michael appeared in the kitchen not long after. He leaned on the counter like nothing had happened. "She's suspicious," he said quietly. My heart jolted. "About what?" "About us. There is no us." I snapped, more harshly than I meant. He only smiled, slow, calm. "You can say that, but you and I both know better." I slammed the dish towel down, anger and fear colliding. "You're playing with fire. Michael, you'll ruin her. You'll ruin me." His eyes sharpened, the softness gone. "I'm not playing." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You can keep pretending, but every time we're alone, it's there. And you want it as much as I do." I backed away until the counter pressed into my spine. He stopped only inches from me, his body a wall, his eyes burning. My pulse thundered. "Don't," I said again, but it came out more like a plea than a command. He lifted a hand slowly, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. My eyes fluttered shut, traitorous. His fingertips grazed my skin, and I almost leaned into it before I caught myself. I jerked my head aside, breath shuddering. "Michael, please." His hand lingered in the air, then dropped. He took a step back, but his voice stayed low, heavy. "One day, you'll stop running." That night, I lay awake listening. Every creak of the house felt like a step outside my door. Every brush of wind against the siding felt like his breath on my cheek. I thought of Emily, her smile, her trust, her eyes filled with suspicion now. The guilt pressed like weight on my chest, but beneath the guilt, something darker pulsed. The memory of his nearness, the warmth of his hand under my chin, the way my lips had parted before I stopped myself. I hated him for making me feel alive. I hated myself more for wanting it. And somewhere deep down, beneath the shame, I feared he was right. That one day I would stop running. That one day, I would fall. Emily decided to stay with a friend that week. She announced it casually at breakfast, sliding her phone into her bag like it was no big deal. "Mia's place is closer to work," she said, eyes on me but not on me. I nodded too quickly, too relieved. And that was my first mistake. That night, the house was too quiet. No second pair of footsteps, no chatter, no doors opening and closing down the hall. Just me in the kitchen, rinsing dishes, telling myself I'd go straight to bed, lock the door, keep safe. I didn't make it that far. I felt him before I saw him. Michael stepped into the kitchen doorway, leaning one shoulder against the frame, arms folded. The overhead light threw shadows across his face, sharpening his jaw, deepening his eyes. "Can we talk?" he asked. Low, almost careful. "I don't think we should," I said, drawing my hands too fast, too hard on the dish towel. "Then don't think," he said simply, and the words stole the air from my lungs. I turned, ready to snap, ready to push him back into his lane, but he was already closer. He moved quietly, deliberately, like a tide you don't notice rising until it's at your knees. "Michael, please." "Please what?" he asked, voice steady, eyes locked on mine. "Please stop seeing you. Please stop remembering the way you almost kissed me. Please stop wanting what we both know you want." I froze, every word landing sharp and true. My chest rose and fell too quickly. "You're her boyfriend," I whispered. "You're..." I'm a man. He cut in, his hand brushing mine on the counter. The contact was light, almost nothing, but it burned through me. And you're a woman who hasn't been touched in years. My throat went dry. That's not an excuse. It's the truth. He moved closer still, his hand sliding from the counter to my wrist. Not forceful, just enough to hold me there, to remind me how alive my pulse was. My body betrayed me again, my knees weak, my lips parted. "Michael," I whispered, but this time it wasn't a warning. His other hand lifted, fingers brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. His thumb grazed my jaw, slow, tender, devastating. Then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't gentle at first. It was years of silence breaking open, hunger crashing through restraint. My heart pounded against my ribs so hard I thought he could feel it. My hands, traitorous, rose to his chest, meaning to push, but stayed there, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. He deepened the kiss, one hand sliding to the back of my neck, the other still holding my wrist as if afraid I'd run. The kitchen disappeared. The house disappeared. It was just heat and skin and breath and the terrifying rush of being wanted. I pulled back, gasping, my forehead against his. "We can't. We already did," he whispered, lips brushing mine again. I should have ended it. I should have shoved him away, screamed, thrown him out. But instead, I leaned in once more, caught in the current, drowning willingly for another taste. His hand slipped to my waist, holding me there, and I let myself fall into him, body against body, reckless, desperate. The sound that broke us was small but sharp, the creak of a floorboard down the hall. We froze. My eyes flew wide. Michael's grip tightened, then loosened, but he didn't step back. "Mom!" Emily's voice, distant, but real. Ice shot through me. My stomach dropped. My hands shoved against his chest at last, breaking the contact. I stumbled back, breath ragged, lips still burning. Michael's face was unreadable, his chest rising with the same frantic rhythm as mine. Emily's footsteps grew closer. Panic tore through me. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, straightened my shirt, tried to calm the storm in my chest. She appeared in the doorway, eyes flicking between us. My world tilted. "You're back early," I managed, my voice shaky, too high. "Yeah," she said slowly, scanning my face, then Michael's, then the space between us. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion sharp as glass. Mia wasn't feeling well. Michael leaned casually against the counter as if nothing had happened, but I could feel the heat of him still on my lips, my skin. Emily crossed her arms. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said too fast. "We were just talking." She didn't believe me. I saw it in her face, in the tightness of her jaw, in the way her eyes lingered on my flushed cheeks. Michael said nothing. His silence screamed louder than words. Emily shook her head, turned, and walked away, her footsteps sharp, each one a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I'd protected. I slumped against the counter, trembling. Michael moved as if to step toward me, but I lifted a hand. "Don't," I whispered. For once. He listened. He stayed where he was, eyes locked on mine, unspoken promises burning there. The house felt smaller, tighter, heavier than ever before. I wanted to chase after my daughter, beg forgiveness, swear nothing had happened. I wanted to deny the kiss still blazing on my lips. But the worst part was, I didn't want to, not completely, because for the first time in years, I had felt alive, and that truth was going to destroy me. If you've made it this far, you know this story isn't finished. Diane and Michael have crossed a line they can never uncross, and Emily is already suspicious. What do you think will happen next? Will Diane choose her daughter, or the dangerous pull she can't resist? Drop a comment below and tell me if you want part 2 of this series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what happens when this forbidden story continues.